Welcome back to Booster Therapy, your cure for that pack cracking addiction. We are here with another Commander deck, and we're going to break down a deck that we made for something that we do for our patrons. So if you want to learn more about our Patreon, head out to patreon.com/boostertherapy. There's a lot of different ways you can support us. Check the links in the description. We even have a TCG player account. And if you like what you see, give us a thumbs up, share us. But one of those things we have for our patrons is you can give us a budget, send us that money, and then we build a custom Commander deck based on that budget and a few real basic questions. So this deck that we're going to break down is for our patron, Chris. Chris, this one was a lot of fun to build. We appreciate your patronage. Everything you see here, the box, the sleeves, everything in this is all yours. So I'll be sending it to you soon after we break this down. So the Commander that we're breaking down today is actually a partner pair. It is Vial, Smasher the Fierce, and Ikra Shidiqi the Usurper. So Vial, if you don't know what he does, is he's really the king of the deck. He's the guy that we're looking to work off of. And it's the first spell you cast on each of your turns. It deals damage equal to that spell's converted mana cost to an opponent chosen at random. So the idea here is casting big spells to do damage and then just get additional value out of that play. Ikra Shidiqi is you gain life equal to the creature's toughness when it deals damage to a player. So that's right, we're going to play a lot of big creature spells. So that's the idea. This is a Jund, fat creatures, big ramp, deal damage, and just have a ton of fun. So we'll keep our partner pairs up in the corner of the screen here, and we'll break down this deck. The one item I don't break down, and you can check the deck list, is going to be the land base. This is the land base. Again, this is working through the budget that I was given. So we went a little light on the land base. You could go greedier, but you don't always need to. But at least you got the command tower. So won't really be breaking down the land base, but we'll be breaking down the rest of the deck. And the first part of that is going to be our ramp. Every good deck needs ramp. And we are going to start off with our Rampant Growth. Rampant Growth in general is just a very inexpensive ramp spell. It's clean, it's easy, it's good if you're in green. The next one is Farseek. Similar to Rampant Growth, it's a 2-mana ramp, which is always kind of that ideal spot for your ramp. And it helps us get our dual lands. It doesn't limit us to our basic lands. Cultivate, because Cultivate and, well, Kodama's Reach. Both of these are pretty essential for every Commander deck. They're staples for any of my ramp. I'm always going to include those two when I'm playing green. Pier's Whim. This is one of my favorites because it allows you to ramp, and any land for that matter, so you can get your command tower or whatever you need with this, a utility land. And you can pick your opponents as foes to make them sacrifice an enchantment or artifact, and early in the game that could be de-ramping them. So it's kind of pushing you ahead one, bringing them back one, and just a big fan of Pier's Whim. Sky Shroud Claim, similar to the Farseek, it says forest for the keyword, so it doesn't necessarily have to be a basic forest. It's anything that has forest in the title or in the type, and they don't come into play tapped. Arcane Signet, because this is that first, when they printed this, I was so excited. I mean, this literally belongs in every single Commander deck. It's perfect 2-mana ramp. Soul Ring, because what would a Commander deck be without a Soul Ring? Commander Sphere, because it lets us tap into all 3 of our colors, because our partner pair is working Jund, so we've got black, red, and green, and this lets us get all 3. Wood Elves, because it lets us get a forest, and again, it's not a basic forest, so it lets us get those dual lands, shock lands, whatever we're searching for. And the final one is the Uvenwald Hydra. I figured this is really on theme for the big mana to hit with Vial Smasher. It benefits from the lands, so it gets bigger as you continue to ramp up to cast big spells, but it also rams in itself, so it lets you search for any land card. It's just a nasty beast. Next, we're going to look at some of the removal we have in this deck that's not on a stick, so removal that's not a creature. First one is Vandal Blast. I feel like every single red deck that I have that has red in it, I'm playing this. It's silly good. I mean, a nasty Wrath of God for artifacts you don't control is always a nice card to have. Putrefy, because it's a staple in Jund. It can kill an artifact, it can kill a creature, and it can't be regenerated because we know that that matters. Actually, fun fact, there was a recent game I played where that did matter. Red Elemental Blast. So a lot of what we're going to do, we want to protect, and there's even a hidden combo in this deck that we're going to want to protect. Red Elemental Blast just helps us evade some of that counter spell, force of will nastiness, that if we see an early Rhystic Study or something horrible like that, we can just get rid of it right out the gates. Nature's Claim, it's a 1-mana destroy artifact or enchantment. I'm always a fan of those inexpensive removal spells. And finally, we have Beast Within. Just in case it's any other kind of permanent, this lets you take it down and eat it up. And give them a beast in return. See? Yeah, totally taking them out of the game. Next, we're going to look at some of our big creatures. Some of those big, nasty creature spells that have a little bit of utility to them. So the first one is the Combustible Gear Hulk. I'm a big fan of this because it lets you get... It's drawing cards... unless they want to take some heat, and he's also a 6-mana 6/6, so we're dealing that Vial damage. We're dealing damage off of him being played or drawing cards. He's just kind of that nasty utility guy. And the first strike on this body is shockingly good. It's really powerful. The Noxious Gear Hulk, don't worry, that's the end of the Gear Hulks, because it gets us another removal spell, so we can destroy a creature with it. We gain life off of it. We're also doing 6 damage if this is the first spell we played in a turn. It's just a nasty little beast. Itali, because Itali's like my most favorite commander card. This is one of those super efficient creatures that I have to assume somebody's going to take out as quick as they can. But if they don't get to take this out, we get to run around with this even for just a turn. When it attacks, getting to exile everybody's top card and getting to cast any number of non-land cards without paying their mana cost seems silly. And that's each player, so it includes you too. You could be casting a giant creature for free, like Bogart and Hellkite. So getting the 8 mana trigger off of this and dealing 8 damage at random with Vial Smasher is really nice, but it also helps us deal with some of those token decks. I also like the flash mechanic here. It's something that we can do in a pinch and kind of get in to do some additional damage. The only thing that's the downside there is if we flash it in on somebody else's turn, it still triggers Vial. So it's another way around. It's, you know, if we're not able to cast it on our turn, or we want to wait because we've already cast a first spell, this lets us get in there in another way. Terastodon, this is one of my favorite big creature spells. Getting destroy 3 non-creature permanents is extremely effective. And man, Terastodon is a nasty don, and 8 mana 9/9 that you get. Yes, you're giving some elephants across the board, but you're getting to deal with a lot of threats that are probably getting away, handling some of those combo pieces that your opponents might have out there. Woodfall Primus, similar kind of thought. It's 8 mana, it's dealing that damage when it's casted, but it's also taking out a non-creature permanent. The persist mechanic is also nice, so we can do this twice, and we do actually have some sack outlets, and we'll talk about that in a little bit, where persist is a keyword that's going to matter for us. So this deck will have some of that recursion that is a lot of fun, and otherwise Woodfall, just a solid creature spell. Protean Hulk, because he lets us search up some of those fun cards, some of the 6 mana ones. You know, normally you play this to get smaller creatures and look for combos. I did this one because we're getting a 7 mana, 7 damage off of it, but also getting the 6 or less lets us get something like the Noxious Gear Hulk. It lets us get a Tali, something like that to kind of crack back in and do some damage. Kaverick, the Merciless. This is a sneaky card, and people don't play this enough. So Kaverick, whenever an opponent plays a spell, it deals damage to that target creature or player equal to that spell's converted mana cost. So they cast their spells, we're pinging them down with damage. We cast our first spell on each turn, we're pinging people down with damage. So it's just really doubling down on that mechanic and really punishing our opponents for playing too much. And this doesn't limit it. It's not their first spell. It's whenever an opponent plays a spell, you get to deal damage somewhere. Artisan of Kozilek, because what would a big creature's spell slinging deck be without some Eldrazi? I love the Annihilator 2 on a 10/9 body for 9, but I also really love the Graveyard recursion, so we can pull back some of our big boys that we might lose, because when you're basically just casting threats, you become the target quickly, people are going to start taking you out. This is just keeping us in the game. And To stay on theme with our Eldrazi, we have Ulamog, the Infinite Gyre. So Annihilator 4, we all know what Ulamog does. When we can cast this one, we destroy a permanent. And again, we're really looking to get up there in mana really fast to cast these things. Kozilek, Butcher of Truth is our next Eldrazi. Probably one of the better Eldrazi. Getting to 10 mana in a commander game isn't that crazy. This is definitely going to help us do that. We have a lot of ramp that's going to push us there quickly. And drawing 4 cards when we cast him, not bad. And then we have Amrakul, the Promised End. So 13 damage to anybody's face at random off of this is going to be pretty satisfying, but it's also getting Amrakul, who's flying, trample, protection from instants, 13/13, for what is likely less than 13 that you'll have to cast it for, but it's still at CMC, and that's still what we're going to hit somebody with. The next thing we're going to talk about is our big spells. So some of the big spells in this deck that we get great cast triggers off for Vial Smasher, but also getting to do nasty things. Worst Fears is an underrated card. People don't play this enough. We all talk about Mindslaver. This is kind of the same thing, except you do it all at once. Yeah, it costs a little bit more, but it's all of the mana up front, and we're going to benefit from that. So you control target player during that player's next turn. So something just to have fun with, to give us more time. It's kind of like an extra turn spell in a sense. If you're taking control of the person who's the most threatening to you, it really can do a lot of damage. Blasphemous Act, because oftentimes you're going to be casting this for very little. We're going to need to buy time too. We're sitting here ramping and building up to cast giant creatures, so we're going to have to stay in front of some of those token decks or things that are seemingly moving a little bit quicker, tribal decks. Blasphemous Act helps us do that, and it's also 9 mana for CMC, so we get to do 9 damage to somebody randomly. Electro Dominance. 2 reasons to do this. 1, it's another removal spell. We can do it to somebody's face, or we can do X damage to a creature if it's a threat to us. The other thing is getting to do this on an opponent's turn, so we can maximize how often we're going to do that Vial Smasher damage. So things like Seedborn Muse and stuff like that really help if you're untapping your mana, or even Wilderness Reclamation. Untapping your mana, freeing it up, and then casting two spells on a turn at instant speed to get that Vial trigger is going to be really nice. Subterranean Tremors, it's similar to like Blasphemous Act. Really, we're just trying to knock out a lot of the creatures early on. We also like X spells because we're not limited by what X is ultimately. That CMC, we push it and push it and push it, and Vial Smasher gets to really chip in to do that. So again, really working off of what Vial wants us to do. Subterranean Tremors does it, and hey, you might get an 8/8 Lizard out of it. Finale of Devastation, it's more pulling out of the graveyard than it is searching for cards. Again, we're a threat. People are going to start picking on us really quick. It's also an X spell, though, so when we can cast this for X, and let's say we get this to 10, and we can get out Kozilek or something like that, and then we get the +X and haste on everything, this is a pretty satisfying card. Finale of Devastation, too. I think it's like $11 or $12. When this rotates out and isn't printed as much, I think it goes way up. It's a very good card. Torment of Hailfire. We're going to have some ways for infinite mana, and Torment of Hailfire is one of the best cards you can pour that into. So again, it's an X spell, so we're going to get to do that damage, that CMC at random, but it also puts your opponents in some tough spots because they can't sacrifice lands because it's non-land permanents. So this is going to empty hands or do tons of damage. It's just a beast of a card. Exsanguinate, similar to Torment of Hailfire. If you've got infinite mana, if we've gotten to that place, this is a great way to pour it into something and really make the most out of it. And Finale of Promise, because maybe we want to bring something back from the graveyard and use it again, and we can copy those spells if we really put a lot into this. So it's just another solid X spell for us. So that's the big spells. Now let's talk about a couple ways that we want to build combos in our deck. So, like most combos, you need good sack outlets. One of the cheapest, most inexpensive, and Protean Hulk tutorable X spells is Carrion Feeder. So, Protean Hulk, yeah, it can get us a Tali, it can get us some of those 6 CMC big boys, but it also can get us our combo pieces, and I wanted to keep them as creature-based as possible with some exceptions. Carrion Feeder is that sacrifice outlet for our creature base if that's the route we have to go, but we have a couple of alternatives in here. Thermopod's another really good one. It's a little bit more expensive though, 5, but it gives us a red mana. So this sack outlet is a little bit cleaner. It's sacrificing and adding mana, And this is going to be part of the way we can get infinite mana too. This alongside of Phyrexian Altar. Both of these are some of the better sack outlets we could hope for in this deck, because both of them give us mana, and mana is what we need to max out those X spells, Torment of Hailfire, Exsanguinate. You know, once we get that combo going, we really want to pay it off. And here's how we get the combo. Cards like, let me just look at this real quick. We're going to look at Renata and, of course, Grumgully the Generous. We've talked about Grumgully before. Renata and Grumgully. So whenever a creature enters the battlefield, it enters with an additional 1/1 counter. That's what we're looking at doing with both of these cards, and that's why they're both in here, doubling down just in case somebody answers one of them. We still have a backup plan. But so if we have something like Thermopod or Phyrexian Altar out, and if we're able to get something like this, like a Grumgully or a Renata, all we need next is one of our Persist cards. And we know we have got a big boy Persister. We've got the Woodfall Primus, but we also have Murderous Redcap, which on its own will do the damage. So really, these three alone, you don't even need the infinite mana anymore. This will do infinite damage to all of your opponents and you'll win. And then these two will do, they persist infinite times and they won't give you the damage like Murderous Redcap, but they will give you infinite mana. So this is our loop for infinite mana. A Phyrexian Altar, a Thermopod, Grumgully or Renata, and then any of our Persisters will give us infinite mana. If they take away our mana sack outlets, that's where we'll lean into Carrion Feeder with Renata or Grumgully and Murderous Redcap, and we'll be able to ping them for infinite damage. We don't need to win this way. We have giant creatures and we're busting people wide open and slinging huge spells, but sometimes you need a combo to finish a match, especially those grindier ones. And if all else fails, if they kill all of those infinite mana, infinite damage outlets, here's the simplest one you could have. Animate Dead and World Gorger Dragon. The combo here is whatever lands you have out there, 2, 3, 4 lands. You get this in your graveyard, you Animate Dead, tap all your mana out, it exiles everything, it exiles Animate Dead, World Gorger then leaves, everything comes back into play, you tap your mana again, Animate Dead the World Gorger, and you do it as many times as you need to for infinite mana to pay off that Exsanguinate. So a few different ways to really do that in this deck. Next, we're going to look through our last bit of utility pieces. First one is Regrowth. Most green decks, I'm going to put this in here again, people are going to see the threat coming a bit with this deck. This just gets some of those cards that they think they've answered back into our hand and back into play, and that's what we're going to need to do. Stolen Strategy. I think this is one of the most underrated enchantments in Magic, especially for Commander. It's a really good way to draw extra spells and have a little bit of fun playing what your opponents have. We should have a ton of mana with this deck, and getting to access that for not just our spells but our opponents is going to be pretty fun. Night's Whisper, it's one of the cleanest draw spells. Draw 2 cards, lose 2 life for 2 mana, and we need to draw into some of our answers, and that's what we'll be digging for. Worldly Tutor, to find any of those combo pieces or big creatures. It's all about how you want to play. Do you want to cast an Eldrazi? Did you want to start working on the combo for infinite mana? It's whatever you want to do to have fun. You're going to Worldly Tutor and find that card. The Wishclaw Talisman. This one I love because it really drives a good political debate. It's a fun way to make a friend and gain that extra protection while you're building your pieces, whether that is a combo piece or just getting that mana ready to do something nasty and big. Wishclaw Talisman you can make a friend with. Moonlight Bargain. This is probably like my top 5 most underrated cards for Commander. 5 mana instant to draw 5 cards, and you can choose whether it goes into your graveyard or not. And again, World Gorger Dragon, we want it in the graveyard, so we won't pay the 2 life, but if we need to pay 2 life to keep the card, we're going to do it. And Moonlight Bargain is just a crazy good card at doing that. Buried Alive, because it puts our combo pieces right in the graveyard. It's kind of like its own tutor spell for those creatures. Faithless Looting, a little bit more draw, getting to do it twice. Reanimate, so if we're filling up that graveyard and if we don't want to do a combo type format thing stuff, we can reanimate any of our big boys. Through the Breach, because if we do get Mana Starved for some reason, you can still Through the Breach in a Miracle and do some damage. And then reanimate it. Swiftfoot Boots, so we can protect Vial Smasher. I mean, Ikra you can protect as well. Gaining life off of those attacks is nice, but really, Vial Smasher is what we want to protect throughout this game. That way we can keep doing the damage that he does. Rhythm of the Wild, to make it tough to counter us and to give our creatures haste, unless you really want the 1/1 counter. Mogus to just slowly whittle away our opponents while we're building our board state. It's a resilient god. It's one that does damage unless they sacrifice creatures. It's a really evil way to control your board. Xenagos, because you never can have enough haste, and the +X is that much more fun. Also, 5 mana for the Vial Smasher trigger. It's not bad. It'll turn into a creature more often than you'd think, too. Through testing, this actually creatured for me more than I would have thought. And then Perforos, because, hey, we can do all of our creatures have haste, which is always good, but we can also trick a red card into play and sacrifice it, so in a pinch, if we need to get a Tali out there or something like that, we're able to get the trigger, cast some free spells, have a little bit of fun, reanimate it later if that's what we need to do. It's just another option like that with our red creatures and our artifact creatures. And that is Vial Shidiqi for our patron, Chris. Chris, thank you so much for being the first to jump into the pool and letting us build a deck for you. This one is custom for him. It's not something I've really seen much out in the wild. And Chris, I really hope you do enjoy it. If you want to learn more again about booster therapy, about being a patron, please head out to our Patreon, find out more, click the links in the description. You get to be a part of our Discord, and we kind of go from there at building a deck just for you if that's something you're interested in. Otherwise, we do a lot of other fun things. And as always, we just appreciate your support. So this is Booster Therapy. You all have a wonderful rest of your week.